or something of that nature, where they're trying to take value from something such as gold or from the dollar, as opposed to where we're trying to, create the basis for new value. And so we'll discuss a few things around that, and how that can kind of play into the projects that you're perhaps going to engage on, and also into the future, where if you are working with some of these applications, these businesses, or within the government, understanding what these technologies enable and how it can be guided to offer new prosperity. But yeah, have we been able to get Todd? I just want to confirm Todd is now available to speak, and I
Yeah,
know Kevin was speaking. Okay,
testing.
great. Yeah, so Todd is our chief of content with our education team, and what Todd's kind of been looking at is how IPv6 can be used to really engage individuals in being able to operate on the global network, right? So Todd can maybe just give a little general summary of that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. So there's a really deep synergy between IPv6 and Bitcoin as it was originally released as a protocol. And the paradigm that is unlocked through the interaction of the two protocols together is something that goes a long way towards fixing many of the issues with the internet. The way that the internet's set up is essentially it's a very unicast way, which is the way of communicating through the internet protocol version 4, and that's really between network transmission between parties is very sort of serialized, where it hops from one routing stop to another, and it's just really not scalable, and it's it's not private, it's not secure. And with IPv6, sorry, I'm hoping that's not an issue, the recording stopping there. Yeah, the paradigm that's enabled with IPv6 is that you can interact end to end with another party. So if I want to speak to Evan, and we have a messaging app that's built as a Bitcoin enabled application, we can create a secure authenticated channel between Evan and I. And when I send him a message through a client similar to WhatsApp, instead of it going back to a server in Utah or somewhere in America and then coming back to me, I can just pass him a file straight away to his Bitcoin alias, which can be derived through his public keys, and that can be used in the generation of a secure IPv6 address. And it doesn't really sound like much to begin with, but that the inversion of that model and having true end-to-end, a mechanism to authenticate end-to-end, changes the paradigm immensely, and you can start to build applications as these collection of APIs and sort of micro components that all can generate a small micropayment and can be securely wrapped in these IPv6 addresses that are so abundant that you can really use them for these granular components. And there's immense privacy gains that are to be had there. There's immense performance gains, and so it's all really at the front of the technology at the moment, and patents are being developed and inventions are being made. So it's a very exciting time to be a part of it, but it does require a little bit of patience as these technologies sort of mature and become really well supported tooling. So I think where would you rather be? That it's a little bit frustrating that sometimes the tooling isn't quite there, but it's so cool to be at the front of this interface and pushing the envelope and really being the pioneers to move into this new paradigm.
Yeah, very excellent. And I think a lot of people don't realize just how, I guess you could say, centralized, or maybe it's less than others may think as well. But I think there's only 38 of these essentially super nodes that essentially all internet requests go through. Is that correct?
I wouldn't know
As
the
for
exact.
IPv4. Yeah.
I wouldn't know the exact number, but yeah, it's a very I don't know. Almost immediately when they released IPv4, they realized, oh, there's some real limitations here. We've got an address space of 4.3 billion unique IP addresses, so they've had to create sort of hacky solutions to give everyone an access way onto the internet through network address translation or such. And it just, when you have these kind of systems, and when you look at what's actually happening in a transfer of some communication or some packets being transferred through the internet protocol, having more of these steps where the packet has to be unwrapped, examined by a routing node, and then passed along. It has performance issues, it has privacy issues. When you can just communicate directly peer to peer, it's chalk and cheese. It's like night and day, so I think there's a the world that's going to come from that synergy and the interaction of those two protocols will just have immense implications for society and the way we transact financially, but the security of our data, privacy, and then moving into that 21st century proper with the ubiquitous
It really
technology.
allows for the individual to become a part of the network, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're not looking at these models where your data is being sold to pay for the cost of you accessing a service for free. If you're you might have all these different connections with people, and they're all paying micropayments, and you're receiving micropayments as well for these groups that you're in. And you might have, like, I think something that we should that is really exciting is to look at exploring developing APIs that can plug into existing tools, and you might micro what's the word, like monetize a little tiny API that gets used by billions of people, and you might have a collection of those, and you have these API marketplaces where you haven't built out an entire application. You've built this sort of function that's really useful that can be slotted into another application or the delivery of a service. And an application itself might consist of 10 different microservices that are each built by an individual and just grouped together for the the delivery of a particular service.
Right. Yeah, and that's really, I guess, I mean, there's a lot of new value in that, or and I think that some renewed value as well, but that's going to open up just massive opportunities where none really existed before. Very good. And I don't know if Kevin, if you're interested in joining in on this, but I know you're a busy man, but perhaps you have some thoughts on some of this.
Well, yeah, I think the world of what will the internet look like when we have micropayments, it's something to think about and imagine. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on sort of the interface. Like, are you going to store the Bitcoin in your browser? Is it going to be in your computer? All this stuff has to be worked out, and I'm sure there's going to be some temporary wallets that are used that eventually will be replaced by something better. But having an internet based upon micropayments and payments is just so much better. It should make so much more sense. But the road to getting it adopted will be an interesting one, because people are used to getting things for quote unquote free, but the reality is that they're not free. They're selling all their data, and their data, they don't even realize how much information people have about them. I used to use a lot of social media, and it wasn't until I saw the other side of it as a developer that I'm like, I don't want to use this. And so the challenge we're facing really is, getting people informed about how much data they're getting stolen from them, and then showing them this better alternative with micropayments. And beyond just avoiding the data, there's also efficiency gains. It's like, imagine you have 20 people that want to connect to a Wi-Fi, and one of them has something really, really important that they need to upload, and everybody else just wants to do something for entertainment. Well, if there's limited bandwidth, then the person that really needs something done can offer to pay more, and he can be prioritized. And that's something that we haven't seen before, and it could be applied to so many different things. So yeah, that's all I want to say is I think the world of micropayments and the internet we're just scratching the surface. We have no idea what it'll look like, but I think it has a bright future.
Very good, Kevin. Thank you. And that actually, you brought up a lot of great points. One actually, though, that I think lends itself well to Nicholas here, who's also on the call from Fifth Work, and that is, well, you may start having to pay for services that you were, getting for quote unquote free, where in reality you were, giving up your personal information and data. In this case, while you may start having to pay for some of these services, it doesn't mean that there won't be options and opportunities to earn. And I just see Nino says that Nicholas says that he's still muted. Callistus, if you wouldn't mind trying to get him operational there, I'd appreciate it. So I think, and I can kind of just talk a little bit more on this until then. Oh, you got, yeah, you're alive. And actually, you brought up great points. One actually, though, that I think lends its. I think you gotta mute your Nicholas. Getting a double call from Fifth Work, and that is, well, you may start having to pay for. Okay, are we good? All right. I don't know if there seemed to be some double feed there. So Nino, are you there? Is that right? You're good? No, I don't have him. Okay, that's all right. No. I don't know. Maybe Clistus, would you please try to figure that out? Until then, yeah, so the whole concept of having to pay for some of these services, it is a little bit daunting in that, okay, now I have to go and put my money on the internet, and I gotta, go and start, figuring out how to just pay to post something. But I think on the other end of it, all of a sudden you're going to have these opportunities, even within these, pay as you go applications, to earn, right? And you see that already in the case of Fifth Work, where you're able to earn a small amount of BSV, which you can then go and use within the ecosystem. And that's really to kind of give you that idea of what is possible there. So whether it's on Fifth Work or on playing games on Haste Arcade, or doing any amount of different sort of I call them micro work applications, you can actually earn perhaps more than you are even earning today. And that of course depends on your skill set and your abilities, but undeniably there's going to be a lot more opportunities for people to earn, and because of the global nature of all of this, those opportunities are not going to be necessarily limited to any one group. And I think you'll see with for instance, the individual being able to fully connect to the network through, you know, IPv6 and micropayments and you know, things of that nature, you'll see that there'll be a whole lot of more interest and activity, and you know, particularly in Africa, you know, where the human capital potential is absolutely massive, and you know, but yet still not able to be fully, you know, I guess, you know, provided the opportunities necessary to reach that potential. But I don't know. So I don't know if Nino has been able to make it back in. I'm hoping he can talk a little bit about this, but I think he's, last I can see is he's not on here anymore. Okay.
I can say something about being able to earn just real quick while he's connected.
Oh, please. Yes, Kevin, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, but if you look at the current internet, there's all sorts of things where people like earn reputation, right? So I don't know if you guys know Stack Overflow, but like you earn these different badges and you get a gold, you know, a gold or a silver or a bronze thing based upon how much you contribute. And people really go crazy over this stuff, right? Or maybe it's in video games where you build up all these rewards and stuff. But then how do you, like, you know, you can't really use it for anything. It's just this thing that everybody went crazy over to get these badges, but then it's not applicable to any other website or whatever. And one of the cool things about Bitcoin is now we can use these points that we gain, and you can interoperate. And in other words, you can use it on other websites. And yeah, so it'll be an interesting world to see how that works.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I think it will be. I mean, I think it's going to be a very exciting, you know, change, really. And I mean, it's going to come down to just even, you know, simple requests that companies will have where they want information instantly, right? They want to get on the ground information, perhaps, whether it's, you know, in the news media or whatnot, and then being able to sort of compensate people for that information is, I think, also, you know, in just one possibility there. There's just so many, and I guess, do we have Nino now?
I'm here
Nicholas,
now.
are you?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
I'm here. There's a delay though.
All the way
I'm
from
experiencing
Japan.
it. Yes. All right. So I like to think of BSV as efficiency in a bottle. There are a lot of programs, a lot of systems, a lot of infrastructure that was built on traditional methods, classic thinking, traditional, prehistoric is the way that it would best to be explained. So for us at Fifth Work, we are tackling education, and the amount of money that is spent on education. This is my daughter. Good night. But the amount of money that is spent on education is wasted, and we want to see almost all of that money go to the students. We want to see them earn a paycheck. We want to see families that are faced with the decision of, do I send one child to school? Do I send all of my children to school? Do we send any children to school? We want to remove that thought process completely. We want their kids going to school to be their source of income. We don't want to have, you know, people graduating from high school in the States, you know, 18 years old, deciding that they can't go to college because they have to start working. We want people to continue that education, continue earning income, when really that money is being spent and stolen, for lack of a better word. The efforts of those students are being absorbed by corporations, banks, large organizations that really don't care. And us at Fifth Work, it's going to be a slow process. We understand this, but we will eventually be there. We will get there because our product's efficient. We do it better. We if you're a student and you're faced with two schools, one of them pays you to go to school and the other one charges you an arm and a leg, you're going to probably go to the one that pays you to go. So that's what our ultimate goal is. And the reason that we can do that is because BSV. It's so efficient. It costs us almost nothing to use. And we don't have to purchase books like a normal school would, or a normal student, I should say. So, I know that I'm speaking from, the United States point of perspective, but I tried to take a French class one time, French, because it was required for my degree. And the books alone were over $1,000 for a semester, which is a few months. There's no reason why is that how that is? But with BSV, I can put those books on the chain and it costs you 0.00001 to access that book. It costs nothing to use BSV, and the efficiency is, it speaks for itself. There are not many options out there to access that information that cheaply, and for someone to actually even make money. Let's say you write a French teaching book and you want to put that on the chain. Every time someone accesses it, you make a penny. But you have 1,000 people that access it in a semester. Well, that's a decent income, and it helps the student, helps the teacher, helps the school. It's win-win for everybody. We are removing not only the theft of the information that they speak about before, but we're removing that theft, and I shouldn't say theft, it is in my mind, but the absorption, that value is being absorbed by people that really shouldn't have it, and it should go to the students. But that's just one small aspect. That's what we do here. But again, what is your market? What do you know? Do what you know. And for people that do agriculture, there's agricultural projects. For gaming, there's gaming projects. There's just BSV is the tool that allows you to beat the competition, because no one can beat your prices, and they allow you to do it better, and they allow you to make win-win-win situations where no one loses. And that just doesn't exist outside of this ecosystem. It just doesn't. You cannot find it anywhere else. Well, at least maybe there is a project that we don't know about, but right now this exists. It's right here. I'm using it. I'm building on it. And I would like to help you build on it as well, give you the education that you can access these tools. And you've seen it. Most of you have probably earned money from us. It's not a lot, but we're still small. And we hope to fix that in the future. And if you build something, come to Fifth Work, let us know. We'll put up a course, educate users on how to use it. We'll do whatever you want, and we'll work with you. Again, it's a great opportunity for everybody. I'll give it back to Evan. I know that he's got probably some talking points that he wants to get back to. So thank you.
That was really wonderful. Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, there's a lot there, but really the concept of being able to redirect how funds are distributed in the education model is, a massive game changer and a great achievement. And I think we'll see, many of these kinds of changes. And I guess this kind of is more along the lines of a renewed value, or maybe perhaps a new category of an altered value system where, instead of having to essentially, sell your information, and pay money as well on top of it in order to, be certified and to gain knowledge, now you can actually have, compensation for that, because of the fact that, so much of the money that is spent in education is spent in ways that don't really benefit the student. Knowledge, now you can actually have, not sure why. Okay. So yeah, thank you. And maybe Todd, do you have anything you'd like to mention on this regards, maybe earning BSV?
Um, yeah, I think people get maybe stuck in thinking that to use to make an application that uses Bitcoin requires really sophisticated embedding, or they think down these legacy ways of what they might have heard through the rest of cryptocurrency, of NFT, of trading, of just tokenizing everything. But there really is there's so many ways you can use Bitcoin. You could create a business that all it did was once a day pushed 32 bytes to the chain in a transaction, which would cost you next to nothing, but that one value could securely summarize your entire business records for the day, and that can give you a competitive edge compared to other people in your industry. You might do some record keeping for the local library or something, and that one record has no impact on your financial outgoings, because it's going to be a fraction of a cent, and then it allows you to sort of securely show to everyone else that this is all our ins and outs of our library, the stock, the inventory that we have in our library. It can all be sort of verified against internal records. And well, I guess that's called the beginning of the triple entry accounting. And once you have that, that one version of the records is, can be fully trusted, then you can interoperate with that record and add, chain in other verifications and stuff to that same, authentication. And that just, highlights, like, if you know a business case and you have some pain points, just think about how a timestamp server that can give you data integrity, that can enhance the interoperability of a data set with another service. There's a business there. So you guys will be, having to think of a context that you're, familiar with from your society, see where things are painful, and that does the default solution to that isn't just to like in 2017, every problem had a ICO launched for it, but this is more like, how can I make a little tool that makes that easier, and using the Bitcoin system as the most performant distributed consensus mechanism for timestamp serving, for data integrity. That could be a killer blockchain application that pushes 32 bytes to the chain a day. So really don't limit yourself to thinking that everything needs to be tokenized or everything needs to be turned into an NFT. It's adding value to whatever business case you can think of. So I'm sure I can say plenty more, but maybe that's a good little summary.
No, that's very good. And I think that really even brings us to perhaps a more basic but important discussion, and that is how important scalability is in this game. And I think a lot of people aren't still clued in to just how scalable blockchain needs to be in order to engage the kind of global enterprise that exists, for instance, today, let alone tomorrow, 10, 15, 25, 50 years down the road, right? And so I think, when we're talking about all these concepts that really aren't being done on any other blockchain besides BSV, such as micropayments and the enabling of IPv6 and all the other additional characteristics that allow BSV to really enable this next generation of applications. scalability is the main factor that allows for all of that to take place, and ultimately is what separates BSV from any other blockchain. And so, in the case of what 32 gigabytes to the chain daily, for just a single business, just think of what that would mean, for the whole world. And then, but, of course, a lot of people will immediately, say, well, this is expensive. How does it scale to that level while still maintaining, its cost effectiveness and its ability to be used by everybody? So I don't know, what would you say to that, Todd? What if somebody said to you, oh, well, we've already, how much is it going to cost to put 32 gigabytes on chain, do you think, in the future?
Well, the thing is, there's not really a need to, like, if you wanted to put 32 gigabytes on chain, the best way to do, like, the best way that 32 gigabytes makes economic sense is if that is 32 gigabytes of extremely sort of economized key mapping of content. It doesn't really make that. There's been a bit of a excitement about putting all the data on chain, but the problem is that the way the mining nodes are incentivized, they're incentivized to connect to one another as quick as possible and to share their own records of transactions and the blocks that they're proposing to the network to one another. And that all happens really quickly, but they're not really incentivized to serve the data out to the users on the edge, like especially querying, which is a really it's not a economical system unless you've got things all mapped the right way in your database. So if every user is trying to give them these sort of complex queries from the edge, then it's not so performant. But what you can do is have a performant way of delivering content that sits nested in a layer above the blockchain, but then can get that verification of those key mapping pairs integrity from the blockchain. And the blockchain then is really well suited to that. And it's that the way that network wants to check whether did one transaction come before another, and the double spending feature, or the check of double spending, can then allow you to call upon that small world network of the miners. And that system is going to be, because of the economic incentives, is just going to get better and better. And those miners, when they're pushing these huge blocks out to one another that are going to include the billions of transactions a second to service the entire global cash system, those blocks might be 25 terabytes. And if you want to push those out in an IPv4 paradigm, they're just going to take hours really for other people to sync them. And if I want to push one to Evan, one to Callistus, one to Nino, I actually have to push that 25 terabytes through my bandwidth 3 different times. In an IPv6 paradigm with leveraging the power of multicast, which is one to many, I put that 25 terabytes out through my fiber or whatever, and it only really creates the overhead one time, despite the fact that Callistus and Nino and Evan can all subscribe to that data and be delivered it. So when you sort of extrapolate out the incentive for that really rapid data transfer, you start to find that the nodes are incentivized to position themselves as close as possible to the fiber backbone of the internet, and then as close as possible to one another to minimize their latency. So people think, oh, blockchains are slow, but if you look at it in that way, they're going down to the millisecond to see whether or not a transaction's been double spent before, has pushing this block out to the network so everyone can validate the contents of the block as soon as possible and be working on a next block which references my block in it, and that's the consensus mechanism. And then I can create, you know, an overlay network of a content delivery network that that leverages, you know, really performant cloud-based infrastructure, and just has that data integrity check back to that blockchain. So don't fall for the sort of the misinformation that a blockchain is slow, or that a blockchain you know, is expensive to use, because you only need to use it as sort of recording the index of content rather than the content itself. And then, you know, any kind of a whole DVD, 4 GB file or something, can be securely represented by a 32 byte value, you know, 256 bits in its hash digest.
All right.
And then you're really cooking. And that paradigm's not here yet, but that's what we're working towards. And we've got sort of a, you know, that's the focus. And we're trying to communicate that, because we're going to need so many resources along the way. There's, you know, how do you securely broadcast your messages going out from your system through leveraging the, you know, the benefits of IPv6 and multicast, and then how do you create the standards, the interoperability between, you know, one system to another, or one application stack to another. So we're going to be figuring out these data structures that we want to commit to for you know, various types of accounting messaging, or data transfer protocols, and all these kind of things. So there's plenty of work for everyone. There's no need to rush out and think, I need to be the first one to, I don't know, make an NFT for this or make a token for that. It's like there's fertile soil for, you know, 50 years really. And you just position yourself as an expert in the field by encountering these problems early on and understanding why solutions were made. There's still the potential to kind of be all over the BSV space and know what tools exist and everything, and you can be, you know, there slotting them into different applications. And maybe there might even be, you know, business cases that aren't blockchain based per se, but it's blockchain consultancy, where it's knowing how to suggest the right tools to a technical developer that might be unaware of BSV, and you can then you know, add value to a business by being an intermediary between them and their technical team to implement some of these solutions. And, you know, that's a valid business case that is still enabled through this potential as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything from you, Kevin or Nino?
I have some questions.
Yeah, go for it.
So this is actually for the Nigerian people. So I don't know what affects you guys. I don't know what problems you guys face. I saw problems that were affecting me and people that I knew, and I reached out trying to fix those. So I do know of one problem. How do you get more BSV? My question for you guys is, in a situation like that, well, not necessarily BSV, but getting access to consistent funds and banking structure. Is this, I hear stories, but I don't know, is this actually as difficult as it is in Nigeria as it sounds from outside of Nigeria? I could have probably said that a lot better. Any students want to jump in the chat?
Perhaps Clistus might be able to comment on that. Yes, please.
Okay, so if I understand, I think you're making reference to recently in Nigeria where there was cash crunch. People could not access physical cash. I wouldn't know if that's what you meant. Okay, great. So the thing is,
not just that, but yes. No, go ahead.
So the thing is, the Central Bank of Nigeria, they're coming up with a policy. They want Nigerians to go cashless, you know, cashless in the sense that let most transactions be done online, right? Or with your card, not carrying physical cash around. So there was a redesign of the Naira. And because what they pushed to the masses to use wasn't enough to circulate. People are used to going to market, for example, the equivalent of 500 USD. Someone can pay for goods for equivalent of 500 USD by cash, right? And there are some places that if you don't give them the cash, I mean, because of infrastructure problem with the banks, for example, you might make a transfer to someone and it takes forever to show up. Have case where someone made transfer, it was the next day or even 2 days before you saw it. So there's distrust in the in the cashless policy thing. They want cash, right? So, but right now it's easy enough. I will tell you as a matter of information that just got released. The Central Bank of Nigeria, they just pushed more than 2 billion naira or so to the market, to the system, and they told all the banks, today is Saturday, and for tomorrow Sunday, normally banks don't work, but they were instructed to work. So right now, most banks are open today, Saturday, and tomorrow Sunday. So there has been this cash problem, right? And that's where the next thing comes up. Most of the students in this program, they want to come up with solution, blockchain-based solution for making payment. Okay, and what that will remove is payments go through in the blockchain. It's settled. It cannot reverse. Okay, so that will give some confidence for that. So that at the moment is what they are looking at, and yeah, I'll just stop at that. The floor is open. I will expect some of the students to type their answers. I'll look at the YouTube channel and the Zoom channel. So when I get student contribution, I'll bring it up to you if you're not looking at them already anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christus. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Nino, what would you recommend then in this case? Because I mean, it sounds like to me it's not something, and I mean from a entrepreneurial perspective, right? Not from the governance perspective, but what is something that business can do to help, smooth out a lot of these challenges and make it more, make funding more accessible and faster and whatnot. Do you have any ideas?
For me, it's difficult to purchase BSV even on the outside too. So I do have issues where I move around a lot. So right now I'm in Japan. Next week I'll be in Europe. Last month I was in the States and Hawaii. So a lot of places are restricted to a geolocation. So for me, when I'm in Hawaii, I can't purchase from X exchange or Y exchange. I have to purchase from people I know or organizations I know, or I basically just can't purchase it. But that's the problem with that is, why am I having to purchase this with fiat to begin with? Why do I have to use a cash or a currency to get BSV? I should be able to just continually earn BSV and then spend BSV on what I want. So what I've found, me personally, a problem that I have is purchasing goods, finding goods with BSV. Now, I don't know if Nigeria has major exports or anything that you guys would have access to. Something along those lines should probably be created. It's just there is a need for products and services and goods in the BSV community to be just not necessarily exchanged for another currency, but directly using Bitcoin as the currency.
So instead of buying it, earning it, right? This is what you're essentially saying.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I even see a question that showed up on the chat here is, is there any way we in Nigeria can push finance using blockchain, like buying goods and paying through blockchain? And I guess probably if you're, maybe, point out where I'm wrong, but I guess what you would be saying is the best way to do so would be just to, create opportunities for Nigerians to earn BSV and for instance, just start to use it naturally as a means of
Correct.
trade, barter.
So
Yeah.
I've spoken with CentB. I've spoken with CentB. You guys are familiar with CentB. They do have the ability to exchange for minutes and data. I know that that is an option with CentB, but again, that is more of a currency to currency almost type of transaction, which is okay as you're creating these solutions and trying to pitch your idea to people. But let's say that you go out and you speak with vendors at a flea market or somebody who, anybody really that provides a service or a product. If you can build a solution for them to get their product into the community, they don't necessarily even need to know BSV. You can have that exchanged through CentB into data. And then you can actually just trade that for data or minutes or whatever it is that you guys are used to using. So you need that bridge between something you know, a solution you have, whatever it is, whatever your daily job is, integrate that with this other cashless society that can exist. And what's unique about BSV, again, another point to make, is a traditional credit card transaction charges 3% on I believe it's the vendor. So if you're selling something and you're using a credit card to exchange that money, 3% goes to the credit card company, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, whoever you're using. So BSV doesn't have 3% charges on that. They have 0.00 something. So you can actually make the same transaction cheaper for everybody simply by exchanging in BSV. So it's not necessarily, it's just you're able to underbid your competition instantly just by having this currency as your main currency. And then if you're purchasing something else using, instead of a credit card again, which would be another 3% charge, because normally a vendor doesn't take that upon themselves. They just increase the price of the product to cover the 3% that they would lose. So you're able to purchase a product and sell a product for essentially 6% less than the value of what it previously cost. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. You just have, you basically have to recreate every system that exists. It's just for a country like Nigeria, again, I don't live there. I don't know what you need. I'll help you, obviously. And I'll try and give you a way to earn BSV as much as I can in my own way that I know. But ultimately, you guys have to do the legwork. You have to find a market that suits you, that's your education. And you don't even necessarily have to be the creator. Find a partner. Find somebody that knows these markets. Learn that, figure out how you can apply BSV, make it cheaper, and then you both have a winning system that's going to be cheaper than the competition, which is most likely using some other expensive cashless society. BTC, the average transaction cost right now is over $3 for the fee alone. So Ethereum also, if you want your transaction to happen, the percentage that you're paying on the price is actually higher than a credit card a lot of times. So these other blockchains, even products that are being built on other blockchains, supposed to be cheaper
and slower
than the current fiat systems. Yeah, they're slower, they're less capable, and a lot of times they're more expensive. So you can take somebody else's idea from another blockchain and essentially recreate it the way it should have been created to begin with, and better, faster, cheaper. You don't even have to be that entrepreneurial, really. It's obviously there's laws. Don't just copyright somebody's idea, obviously, but you can recreate these ideas better.
And we do see that, right? Within the BSV ecosystem, there are, for instance, like Twitch is a Twitter clone that's BSV enabled. Essentially what Twitter, should have been built as, or could have been built as. And but yeah, I think that's good. And there was a couple of good questions. One question was, how do we earn BSV that can be enough to pay for our daily needs. And actually there's another comment right before that question, discussing an e-commerce site where this individual is looking to build a site that, you know, items can be bought and sold, presumably for BSV or you know, whatever. But in this case, you know, I think that's a huge part of it, right? Is just enabling a marketplace for items to be bought and sold using BSV. And that would allow people to earn, right? And of course, some of those marketplaces are global, right? Whether it's like the, you know, the education or you know, maybe the AI, you know, API market or whatever is global, but then also just enabling, you know, the local farmers markets or whatnot, where people can all of a sudden, you know, be able to access, you know, get to do transactions cheaply and to do them in ways that enable them to have, you know, instant access to digital products and services, right? Like, so for instance, if you did sell, you know, some of your local produce, you would be able to then immediately take that BSV that you sold it for and buy minutes with it, or whatever other digital services you would need through, for instance, SendBee, right? And that, you know, kind of gives you that, you know, that instant process where otherwise you may need to, you know, go through a few different, you know, you may have to take that cash, deposit into the bank, and then, you know, transfer it to, you know, whoever to purchase what you need. But yeah, so maybe is there anything perhaps, and I saw a few other questions.
Yeah.
One was about the implementation of possibly the eNARA on BSV, and I mean, you know, that's something that's entirely possible, and I think it should be, you know, there needs to be some research into this from the Nigerian side, because, you know, fundamentally the country, and I know recently there was a Swiss stablecoin released on BSV, and I think this even kind of goes to a previous comment I saw about people using Tether, right, which is, you know, this yeah, very scary, you know, black hole of information on how much, you know, dollars are in reserves and who controls what, and, you know, we won't go into that, but I think, you know, in the case of, you know, stable coins on BSV, right, or you know, I mean, let's just say stable coins, but, you know, fiat currency using BSV, you know, the first real one is this, in this case, the Swiss currency, and you know, why wouldn't Nigeria benefit from doing this? I mean, you know, I think the country that can fully enable the first, you know, BSV based currency is going to have a massive increase in the value of their currency, right? Because all of a sudden you're getting all that usability features of BSV, but you're getting, for instance, you know, those features with a national currency that, you know, the state can, you know, have some oversight over, and you know, that might be something that would make the Naira very competitive in the currency markets, particularly in Africa, where all of a sudden, you know, you would be able to get all these, you know, micropayment abilities and whatnot, you know, IPv6, IP to IP transactions and things of that nature, with the Naira. And any comments to that? Maybe Todd, Kevin,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. So let me come in here. So I see a station where we can start working on this. So for the size of students we have in this project, it's massive, the size of students here. So I think in the project level, pay more attention to products that we encourage BSV to pay for goods and services, right? Absolutely. This program we're doing with BSV is from the federal government of Nigeria. So the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, they are the ones that came up with this program, paid for the scholarship. They wanted our students to explore this option. And recently, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, they are looking for ways to functionalize the e-naira. So it's possible that our students could build these products. And because of the involvement of government in this project, because there could be interface with both ministries, both the CBN and the NITDA, and we look at ways where we can extend the use of e-naira, maybe putting, somehow talking together with the BSV thing. So I think that would be great if our students can come up with ideas on this, and we run that through your team and Ivan, and we'll see how we could support that. I think in terms of the high-level engagement, it could be easier to do that, being that these are government agencies that are involved in setting up this program. And that's interesting and exciting about this thing, the way it's taking a life of its own, and how the students are coming with this idea. So hopefully, we are gathering all their project ideas, We're hoping that when we graduate them by end of April and the projects that before then, we could have got a list of all these projects and we'll look it over with your team and see which of them could help us in actually moving this forward. Thank you. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Sorry, got a bit of a cough here. Todd, do you have anything you want to mention?
Yeah, I was going to say that, these are some very worthy projects to participate in, and they're definitely valid, but there are also people that are working on some of these solutions themselves that are still just a little bit immature. So I saw people mentioning fake product, authentication. Is it a real or a genuine product? There are platforms that have been building these things out for the last 2 or 3 years that are starting to mature. So Nchain is a company in the BSV space that has a huge patent portfolio, and much of its technology they're licensing out for free use on the BSV platform, and you can sort of examine that through. There's a portal where you can apply for a license of patent technology, also a way to sort of navigate their patent database and figure these things out. But these Nchain, for example, has, they're the kind of people that have the technological suite that they can go and propose these solutions to the Nigerian government or such to build out the e-naira, and that is sort of happening in the background. But the best way we can encourage the government to look at BSV as a serious contender is to have this whole rich other ecosystem of sort of micropayments and little micro enterprises that aren't as ambitious. I don't want to discourage anyone, but I think that it's probably beyond the scope of what we're going to graduate you as to go and implement the e-naira on BSV for any one of us in this group, because in reality people went and said, okay, how can we tokenize this product and create an asset that can be moved around using the blockchain? And then they went and looked at the problem, and the scope just balloons, and they go, wow, there's so much opportunity here. Boom, 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 boom. And now 3 years later, they've built a rich sort of suite that they're a business that can say I'm talking about Tokenize, for example, or some other software as a service companies like ELAS, and they partnered with what's it called, Buzzmint. So they built the technology for Buzzmint, which is then going to be an NFT platform that can allow you to create sort of I don't know, product integrity systems using sort of tamper evidence seals and things like that. So your business could even be using mature tools from that someone else has built out and adding that to a supply chain. But yeah, just take a look before there's some very big lofty projects there, and they're worthy of that consideration, but they're definitely a complex multi-stage thing that's going to happen. But as we demonstrate the use case, the utility of Bitcoin in so many other ways that are more low-hanging fruit, something that to me is a big opportunity I see is these ready-made sort of self-hosted open source projects. I've used a chat client, Mattermost, and it's a open source self-hosted version of Slack, essentially. But it's a rich project that in the license it's permissive to use it for any other purposes to commercialize. You can fork the entire repository, take it off, and create an application you want, and you can charge for it. So you could put a Bitcoin wallet in that and generate a way of build out a way of making transactions and recording the transactions. I found like an open source self-hosted classifieds, like a Craigslist or something, that you could put a micropayments wrapping on. And as you build out these interfaces to leverage things like the integration connectivity between, say, Slack to GitHub, there's opportunities there, and really what you're then building out is just a little way of transferring data in a structure, a data structure that another application is going to be able to interface with. And when you build out a lot of those little services themselves, you'll start to get comfortable to build out these bigger tools. But I think just going straight for the holy grail of a CBDC on Bitcoin as a student project is it's going to be,
well, yeah, I don't want to I know what you're saying, but I also think it is a good student project, actually. I mean, from the perspective of how can you solve these problems, right? And I mean, a lot of these students will be perhaps in government or are looking to work in government. So I mean, while it may not necessarily come to fruition, you may begin to understand a lot of the challenges and how they can be remedied, enough to position yourself as an expert in the subject. Yeah. And so a lot of these projects, don't think about it as purely, and I think this is what Todd's getting to really in this is don't think about it as purely, okay, I'm going to take this project and I'm going to turn it into a product for the market that's going to do like a million times profit return or whatever, right? And that might be the case, and I hope that is the case for some people who, the people who are perhaps ready for that. But I think what Todd's also saying is to take it as an opportunity to kind of like flex your muscles a little bit, get acquainted with the tech, get acquainted with the concepts, and kind of, and however that might be, whether that is building a real product or maybe just a project that seeks to eventually build a product. Might not know exactly what that product is going to look like just yet. but being open and looking to kind of explore and experiment in new ways that that BSV really enables is, I think, a good way to go about it. And I see a lot of people have some really great project ideas here. And a lot of these are some of these are project concepts that we are familiar with just generally, because they are very attractive problems to be solved. But I think undeniably you should let your curiosity and your creativity kind of lead the way when it comes to utilizing BSV in your projects and products and services. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Todd. So yeah, and people are talking about trust, right? And I think that's something that is a very big conversation to have. How can you trust these blockchain technologies, and particularly when there is a lot of sort of speculative malinvestment that has gone sour in the world, and that kind of has tarnished a lot of these projects that are looking to really create real value. And that's really where BSV separates itself. And I even saw a comment earlier, I think on the YouTube stream, somebody was talking or asking about the BSV price, and and there is a perhaps this misunderstanding that the price in itself is a reflection of the value. And at this stage of the game, it is such a speculative industry. There's venture capital funds and investment funds that their whole purpose is to drive the price of some coin up, to buy it cheap, drive it up, and then dump it on the little guy. And so in this market, looking at the price, it's incredibly deceiving. And what we'll see, I think, eventually happen as a lot of these sort of ineffective blockchains and cryptocurrencies fail, is that the market will begin to price for value, and by value I mean utility, usefulness, right? The more useful something is, the more valuable it is. And so I would imagine that as the market changes from this sort of rampant speculative hyper investment model that dominates the West, to a more utility driven valuation, BSV will match that accordingly. So hopefully, if anybody is asking about that or is curious, that helps answer that question. But yeah, I don't know, anything about trust perhaps that, probably, people are talking about trust and transparency. And really, there's nothing that you can trust more than BSV, and is more transparent than BSV. And a big factor of that is that we know effectively what's going to happen, within the network's model, today, tomorrow, and 50 years from now to some degree. But what other reasons would BSV be worthy of Nigerians' trust? Todd, maybe, or Kevin, or whoever would like to jump on that, or both of you perhaps, even.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Kevin's still there. He's going to be busy this morning, but
yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to take it, or do you want me to run with it? Either or.
Well, I think basically, if you look at what Bitcoin is it's a way of time stamping things. And of course, the micropayments are enabled by this and stuff because we can have a more efficient way of verifying transactions and stuff. But the ability to actually show that a document exists at a certain point in time is super valuable. So you could imagine, like, let's say you have a bank and it has all of these mortgages and stuff. Well, in the past, what has happened is some people have actually hacked into that and they've changed stuff around and nobody knows what changed. And it's like, oh my God. And so technically the only way that they're able to go forward is to rebuild the database from paper records. But who actually does that, right? And so you have this huge vulnerability and it's just a mess. But if with Bitcoin, if we can timestamp things and we can prove that the database was this way at this point in time, then if you get hacked, you can actually, it gives you a lot better ways of verifying what did change. And you can rebuild from maybe just a month ago instead of from 10 years ago. And banks aside, there's all sorts of other applications for that, right? You can just think of any sort of business that has to have official records, which is pretty much every business, right? So yeah, that's something to look into, is the time stamping aspect of it. And with that, you don't even have to worry about the price. I mean, the price doesn't matter. It's like the price really should have never been a big deal. It's kind of the way I think about it is like oil, right? So with oil, you have all these cars, you have the motorcycles, the airplanes, all these people that are using the oil for some productive use. And of course, there's some people that speculate on the price, but that's not the main point of oil. Okay, people don't. I mean, it's what can you build with it, not what can I fetch with the price. So
yeah,
that's what I have to say about that.
Very good, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, so
I think
we
that
got the oil
ties in with I guess what I was trying to answer a few questions at once, I think. And when people are asking, how can I make a meaningful income with BSV? You know, when the price is volatile and you know, if you want to focus on simply paying with Bitcoin itself, you do have, there's a vulnerability there that if I've just, you know, received $100 worth of invoices being paid and my I'm sitting on that now until I need to buy some more stock and the price goes down 20%, then that can cause a big problem. But if you're you know, posting on social media and you're you know, you're sharing affiliate links that use BSV micropayment to sort of incentivize people to share links, you might have, you know, many dozens of micro revenue streams that bring it in. And you know, sometimes I've had it where I you know, have made 10 or 15 comments on Twitch, say for example BSV Twitter, and then I make one comment that, you know, I just sort of threw away there, and you know, 50 people like it, and so I spent, you know, 12 costs to post action on there, but then I was rewarded by 50 people's likes, and you know, the content of the platform increases, so more people want to use it because it has, you know, people aren't just putting anything on there because they do have to pay. But similarly, you know, when you do something good, it creates that sort of closed economy on there. And you might have say on Stack Overflow, you might have answered a really good question on a Bitcoin Q&A. You might have written a really good article. You might have, you know, had a funny picture that people liked, and you've got then, you know, 100 things making you 2 cents a day for the rest of your life, even. And you know, it's something as simple as a dictionary that uses micropayments on it has the grandest ambitions to sort of conquer the whole of linguistics and, you know, democratize ownership of royalties on word meanings and stuff like that. So there's there's many ways to use that micropayments, and as well to sort of have your property rights from the content that you've created online be sort of honored through the provision of these micropayments going forward into the future. So that's probably a really good way to earn some, as with fifth work, where then you can, I don't care if I made a comment and it got a cent, and then that cent is worth 0.8 of a cent the next day, because I was kind of I wanted to make the comment anyway to engage to the network and the people, the users of that platform. And when you interacting in that way in a market, it starts to build momentum, and the circular economy grows bigger and bigger. And if you're an active user in there, your ability to earn increases. And I think that's a really good gateway and a way of thinking about these apps to build for everyone to just be, focusing on the value that's immune. The micropayments are immune from the volatility of the asset, because it doesn't really matter. You can probably create a business model that the cost to enhance your business application is fractions of a cent. So your markup of profitability, even charging a 1 cent micropayment, is immense. That 20% swing doesn't matter to you.
And I think on top of that, the big sort of stabilizing factor in prices on the market is velocity, right? Like the more velocity within the market, the more stable prices are. And in the case of BSV, I don't think there can be more velocity, like enablement, really, than what BSV allows for. With as more and more users are using it, as more and more businesses and services are using it, I mean, the velocity will, be well beyond anything that we've ever seen before in any market or in any currency. And so as it scales, it becomes considerably more stable in terms of pricing.
And you said there's nothing that you're aware of that, Bitcoin is the most efficient system there is. The way that those miners and stuff are incentivized to be in, very intimate connection with one another. There's limitations for when you have distributed systems for how performant they can be, but by introducing those economic incentives, it's ensuring that it's always prioritized to be as capable and efficient as possible. And every time someone makes an innovation in that and gets themselves a competitive advantage in the market, that incentivizes another person to come, or another entity to come and implement those same innovations, or to invest in it themselves. And so we're talking about a technology that's going to replace put a value on the transmission of data packets, and optimize their routing. It embeds so deep down into the network stack that you can count on that efficiency at all level of an application. And there's no reason to look anywhere else for performance. And like sure. It bends your brain sometimes when you start really thinking about metering internet traffic, the packets with Bitcoin. That's I think the content delivery systems, these media streaming platforms, all that sort of stuff will be, I don't want to go and pay $20 or no, say $3 for a movie that had a really good preview, but that 2-minute preview was the best 2 minutes of content from the whole movie, and then the rest of it's garbage. I'd rather pay, open up a payment channel and be streamed that content through it, and if it's no good at 10 minutes, I
Pay as
turn it
you
off and I'm
watch.
paid for a 10 minutes
Yeah.
worth of a 180-minute movie. That when you create that model, the economic signaling for businesses is so much more direct, and it incentivizes all manner of content creators to improve what they're putting out there.
Payment channels, really do unlock a whole other potential to so many already existing, businesses. It's, it's unimaginable. I mean, even, for, wireless connectivity, right? Like you can just pay as you surf the web, for instance, as opposed to, having some sort of subscription fee or anything of that nature. So sorry, I just wanted to go to one question I saw that a little while back. How can BSV as an economical system be paramount or significant to the healthcare system and development of health in medical institutions at large in Nigeria? I think that's a really good question. I think there's lots of ways. One way that comes to my mind, obviously, is just in being able to, have sort of infectious disease, notification and control systems where people would actually be compensated, for instance, for providing their medical information that would be beneficial to these institutions. And in many cases, I think it would actually be much cheaper for these institutions or organizations to actually be, paying their citizens, their clients to provide them the information, as opposed to having to go and pay millions and millions of dollars to companies to go and try to find out perhaps and get it wrong generally, right? Where you can have considerably more data, much higher accuracy, for much cheaper, and it's financially beneficial to the participants and whatnot. Anything perhaps Kevin or Nino or Todd would be interested in saying regarding using BSV within the healthcare system at wide in Nigeria?
Well, I think just being able to keep records and prove that things existed, right? So imagine that maybe a company is trying to fraudulently get a drug out to market or whatever, and if they did studies that aren't accurate, or they changed the studies, or they manipulated data, that's a problem. And if there's a way to prove that a document existed at a point in time, that all the participants within the study were real people, all that kind of stuff is possible. It'd be difficult to set up, but I think over time, when more and more people are using the thing, and things like identity are built in, then you could at least prove you don't even have to reveal your actual name, but you could prove that you're a real person that participated in the study, and that can be time stamped. And if a company wants to prove that their drug is safe, then they have these really robust records. And likewise, if there's a fraudulent person, it's going to be a lot harder for them, which is going to be good for us, because there is a lot of, in the medicine industry, there's a lot of fraud. So
yeah, absolutely. A lot of fraud, and it comes from many different actors in the space, right? So it's not like something you can narrow down to one particular part of the healthcare system. But I think, yeah, like you're saying, transparency right there, is going to be massive. And then that also, what, I don't know what percentage of, for instance, medical insurance costs are, induced because of the losses by fraud, right? But for instance, pretty much anybody who's paying for medical insurance, part of that premium is the to cover the losses that the company experiences through fraudulent claims. And so, I mean, just having that kind of transparency and accuracy when it comes to records and patients would reduce the cost of medical insurance, reduce the cost of medical services, possibly to a very significant degree. And I think that is necessary, really, when you're talking about large healthcare schemes and things of that nature. Okay, so can BSV make voting? So well, that's a good question. Can BSV make voting from home possible? That's really I think sort of a coup de grace, application in that, being able to vote from home. I think everybody wants that ability. Having sort of secure individual voting is, I think, a very attractive premise. And I think it is, basically, some of the things that we were saying before when it comes to being able to, have an identity that, on chain, essentially, that, verifies your eligibility to vote. That's fully possible. And I think it's something, though, that is very much going to be dependent on, the laws of the nation that such activity takes place in, in regards to, if there is some sort of, for instance, biometric, dimension to it or whatnot. But I don't know, maybe Todd or Kevin, do you have any comments on in-person or in at-home voting using BSV?
It's definitely possible, but it's not the low-hanging fruit, because there's a whole lot of other things that tie into that. So identity is another one, for example, that when you first think about it, you're like, what? Yeah, well, let's put identity on the blockchain. And but it needs to be really well thought out, and identity isn't just one thing. It's generally a collection of all things that slot together. So it's the and do you have different identities for different depths of activity? So you might want your voting identity to be sort of correlated to some kind of documentation for your citizenship or something, so a passport, driver's license, but then you might have a different identity that you want to go and make jokes online with. So it becomes that when you can solve the problem of identity, you can unlock a whole bunch of other services like voting, like the ability to engage in contracting. I saw a comment there about, can Bitcoin do smart contracts? Yes, it can do anything, but a smart contract, for something to be a contract, it has to have two parties engage with it, in a contract that's enforceable at law. And to create a digital signature needs to really, you can use a digital signature algorithm, but to create a digital signature that is valid at law, it needs to have identity attached to that. So I think smart contracting is a bit of a jargonistic term that's developed in the space. But what we're talking about is we can use Bitcoin's script language to create statements that can be resolved down to a true or false, and that can create these digital agreements which allow you to then use, we like to push the term programmable money. So we can create digital agreements that aren't contracts, but function as, you know, what people will be marketing, smart contracts, automatic payouts of a certain thing. But then when we add identity and certain things into it, we can then create, you know, legally enforceable contracts that can stand up to protect property rights, that can protect, you know, user agreements, or, you know, privacy and sharing policies and stuff for an organization. There's lots that can be done and enforced through Bitcoin's scripting language. And that's, you know, these tools for identity they're coming, but they're not here yet. So it's a little tricky to just roll these systems out. But you might find that there's something that you can start to think about that, I often go on little tangents, but I was thinking of the other night, I was looking at my family tree and thinking, maybe there's a way to create an identity system or some input into an identity system that verifies sort of my parent and child relationships in a family tree. And because you've then got a little shard of that family tree, you could interoperate it with other people in society, and you might have, you know, this graph that you can construct of the, you know, the family lineages from, you know, your village or something, and they slot together. So you do have this kind of identity, and, you know, when Todd's making a digital agreement in here, it carries with him behind that we know who he is, because he slots in and he's the second cousin of this guy and he's married into that family, and it does these things. And, you know, I don't know how viable it is necessarily, but I think these identity systems will be overlaid over the top of Bitcoin and allow access to certain services and allow us to make certain agreements which are then enforceable. The more sort of micropaymenty the agreements are, the less you're going to probably engage in, I don't know, some kind of process to exercise your rights there, because that's the benefit of Bitcoin, is it can kind of allow you to sort of irreversibly transfer money for, you know, content on a really low level without involving mediation and disputes. But you know, you're only going to get the property rights honored for your land title if you've got an identity system that's an input into that digital agreement for your, you know, your property title deed or something.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, a lot of good questions coming in on the chat here. You know, one talking about, for instance, the ecosystem. You know, and I think, you know, kind of did a good summary there. There is, you know, considerable you know, amount of applications and businesses out there using BSV, but it's still very much an early, you know, stage ecosystem where there's still, you know, so much potential that hasn't been tapped. And, you know, I think it's, you know, I definitely urge people to go out there and explore and see what people are doing and building, and how things like digital identity and things of that nature that, you know, we've been discussing can play roles in these already existing applications, for instance, right? And that kind of comes up to some of the other questions and points was, you know, what are the opportunities for participants in this program, you know, after graduating? And, you know, I think there's going to be, you know, the project stage is really where you're going to be able to highlight that your skills, your, you know, your understanding of the subject matter and how to apply it to the real world. And again, it's not just about whether or not the project is successful or even if it's going to, you know, be built necessarily, but that it really does show your knowledge and your, you know, your creativity and and innovative usage of BSV. And that is, we were looking to showcase those projects so that people will see them, businesses, investors, all sorts. So, that kind of, thinking about that in regards to how you can, perform collaboratively within the already existing space. You might be looking to say, just create a particular feature that you would like to market to, already existing applications or, solutions for them, as opposed to, a direct to consumer approach. But yeah, lots of chances there. But there'll be more, we'll discuss more about those opportunities as we get into that phase of the program. Let's see, anything more in the chat? Let's see. One person asked, how feasible is it to register at a particular hospital and access patient data in every other place that the EMR is installed, given that the data is currently stored on site at each hospital? So in this case, what's happening is that the data itself, your data, right, because it is your medical data that you're discussing, it's only going to be really accessible to you and whoever you enable access to it, right? So it's not like your data will be stored at the hospital anymore. Rather, your data will be maybe stored and encrypted in a certain way that only you are able to, allow or enable access. And so when you're going to the hospital and you're, at registration, you're providing them, access to your records, for at that point, right? And so, that access would then be revoked when you're, for instance, no longer a patient at the hospital, but with all the records having been updated to, the procedures and the medications and everything else that you received. And so as you go between hospitals and service providers and whatnot, you would be retaining all of your own data. Okay, let's see. Question to Todd. Is tokenization of real estate a low-hanging fruit?
It's probably getting lower. As these tokenization platforms come out. So we've tokenized is quite a mature one. Asset layer is another platform that I think is going into a new phase of commercialization. So using some advanced platforms that have already built out a lot of the infrastructure, then it could potentially be, the fruit is getting heavier on the branch and getting there lower, and probably would involve, creating a business that interfaces with your sort of land title registry that interfaces with, if you have real estate agents and things there, or how that process is conveyed through conventional, what protocols are followed under legislation to transfer an asset. You're going to need to look at those systems and see, hey, if I know how the tokenized solution of asset layer or tokenized works, how can I now sort of create a digital document that can pass from entity to entity that has an interest in the in that process, and that they can sort of interpret it through their software interfaces, whatever that means. So you're going to look at standards for how property is structured as a data item, and then what other fields an agent might need, what other fields a bank might need. So it is getting lower, but I would say that it's a sophisticated solution is required, and immense value in it if you can create it. But it's probably more than just a technical solution. It's that's the understanding the whole flow of a land title or something being transferred, and seeing the way that you can create blockchain solutions that are easy to pass along through that.
Very good, thank you. There's a question about what is a hash and what is hashing, right? And I think actually might have answered that, but essentially a hash is an encrypted inputs. So whatever data was inputted into a hashing function, the hash is the result of that. Okay, so let's see. How feasible will be to use BSV? And sorry, the chats are coming by fast. Where did that go? Just, how feasible will it be to use BSV as a payment system in public transportation? Well, I mean, when you talk about, for instance, payment channels, for instance, I mean, it would be possible to have a payment channel that's it's calculated, the payments calculated by the amount of miles, for instance, that was driven, right? So whether that's in like the sort of, and if we want to look at maybe more avant-garde forms of transportation going into the future, I don't know if Nigeria yet has seen many of these sort of scooters, these you basically have an app and you go up to a scooter on the side of the street or whatever, and you can rent it effectively. This kind of systems are have become very popular, and I don't know, I know there's been a lot of laws made against them and whatnot, so they might be declining in popularity around here, but that kind of freedom of usage, coupled with, for instance, a system that instead of paying by time but paying by distance, creates a more fair and more maybe economically acceptable way for these businesses to operate in places like Nigeria. So there's a lot of ways that it can work with technology. But that's just, for instance, one that's a little bit maybe unorthodox. Let's see, there was a bunch of questions that came by. Sorry, everybody, we're getting a little bit late here. It's coming up 5 a.m. for me. So if you see me kind of starting to, lose it a little bit, that's why. Okay, let's see if I can find, can we use BSV in oil companies to protect against illegal bunkering? I mean, absolutely. I think, whenever it comes to sort of tracking commodities, in the supply chain, I think there's nothing better than BSV for that. And I don't know if there's anybody doing oil yet particularly, but I think the opportunities there are massive. Is BSV feasible in solving border disputes? Well, this one is difficult because there's so many different political elements to any kind of border dispute. But I think what it can enable is greater trade, cross-border trade, particularly when there's different currencies involved, and sort of aiding in that, in the exchange process, and or even in the lucrative, what is the, sorry, again, it's a 5 a.m. brain right now. Sending money abroad, earned abroad, back home, for instance, right? Well, there's many Nigerians working, in America and everywhere, and being able to facilitate the transfer of funds, remittance and whatnot.
Remittances, yeah.
Yeah. It was coming. It just took a little while. But getting the remittances and moving goods and whatnot, enabling cross-border trade. I mean, there's so much that can be done with BSV that I think it will make it more, I think, lucrative for countries to solve their border disputes peacefully. And then, just based on the sheer economic benefits of doing so, as opposed to, isolation and potential conflict. And I think so, while it may not necessarily be a direct solution to border disputes, I think it does offer some benefits in helping to solve them peacefully. Okay. I don't know. Do we want to continue this? Is there anything, Kevin, that you're interested in saying? Or Nino?
Nope, I'm good for now.
You're good? Okay, great. Clistus, I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
Yes, I'm want to say you guys have done a very great job. Like, it's just 6 minutes left to the end of the time, right? So I'm very sure the students are so happy to engage with you guys today, and
Thank you.
yes, I also know that we'll have more of this, within this short period we have. And because right now all courses are running in parallel, so a lot is going on. From our own side, we will start from next week. We'll start having session like 2 times every week with them. Just go through the courses, clear up things, hash function, Merkle tree. So we'll start it next week, 2 times every week. We'll have that. And in between, we'll also have session where, you can come back again, or any member of your team, the ladies, I don't know, whatever they are cooking. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
we would.
So I just want to say maybe your final words, all the participants, all our guys from the team BSV, maybe just your final word for the students, and we'll call it a wrap for today. Thank you.
That'd be great. Yeah, Todd, would you like to go first, or there you
go? Sure. Like I saw a lot of questions. Can BSV be used for X, Y, Z? Yes. Yes, it can enhance everything of those, but it might not be the way you would initially think. But it's gonna, that triple entry accounting, secure, records, integrity, they're fundamental for building a healthy society. And so it can do all the things that everyone's asked here. The answer is yes. The question is how. Hopefully we can help you understand how. Hopefully you can help each other understand how. Probably many of these hows are going to be more than the workload of one person. So find people that are interested in the same things, find people with complementary skill sets, and start figuring out that how.
Very good. Thank you, Todd. Nino?
So, like he said, BSV can probably do it. So what BSV does easily are integrity and availability. So those are very cheaply done on BSV. So what you would have to bring is the confidentiality piece and how you're going to apply that to your speciality. What do you do? What do you want to do? What do you want to build? And that's, you can ask us the questions on how we would do it, and I'll help you out all day. I will, I'll answer your questions to the best of my ability. But ultimately, you guys know what you need to build. You guys know what Nigeria needs. And if you need help, we'll help you. But it has to be your effort applied to the solutions to build what you guys need. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun. I actually didn't expect to stay for the whole time, but it was really fast. It went by quick. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Nino. Kevin, are you still there? You want to say anything?
Yeah, sure. Just on the same theme. It's sort of like, what could the internet be used for? And it really is used for, it plugs into most every part of our society. And I think triple entry accounting, micropayments, all the stuff that Bitcoin enables will be the same. So yeah, there's just unlimited opportunity. Well, yeah, I guess you could say unlimited, but let's just say a lot of opportunity. And it's really exciting. So it's good to talk with you guys, and I'll see you maybe sometime in the future.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and everybody who's participating in this program. It's really exciting to see how many interested minds in Nigeria are working towards understanding BSV and implementing it into their projects. To me, the opportunity is very real for Nigerians here, not just at home, where there are a lot of challenges and issues that can be tackled and solved with BSV, but then using those lessons learned from that process to then go on and solve problems all over the world, right? Because a lot of the issues that Nigeria is perhaps facing right now are actually going to be faced in other countries in the future, right? So by being able to solve the problems of today in Nigeria, you may also be solving the problems of tomorrow in America, in wherever. So I would really, emphasize that before necessarily just looking globally, to look locally as well and see how your solutions, if they are global solutions, can be implemented and tested locally. Because ultimately what we want to achieve here is to provide Nigerians the skills and knowledge to be able to build a next generation nation, right? This is a truly a global digital marketplace, and Nigeria can be a leader in that, and it should be a leader in that. It has the human capital, it has the human potential, and I think that by being able to achieve great things at home in Nigeria, Nigerians can then go and achieve great things abroad around the world. So thank you all, and I wish you the best and look forward to next time. Take care. Thank you, Clistus.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll be happy to have you again. And for the students, from next week, we'll start our weekly courses, on all the courses we are doing parallel. So thanks everyone that showed up. This is a live stream. It will be on our channel. For those of them engaged on a Saturday, those of them, they can always come anytime and go through that. So thank you again, the BSV team. We are so happy to have you people. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, and that.